Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon and watched the asteroid field spread out before him like a sea of floating rocks. The mining ship had been out here for 3 weeks now, pulling valuable metals from the space rocks. It drifted in the dark between stars. It was quiet work, boring work, but it paid well and kept his crew busy. Jake was a tall man with graying hair and hands that knew how to fix things. He had been flying ships for 20 years, ever since. He left his home planet to find his fortune among the stars. The New Horizon was not much to look at, but she was his ship, and she had never let him down. Lisa Rodriguez sat at her station, checking the engines. She was the best engineer Jake had ever worked with, small and quick with dark eyes that missed nothing. Tony Walsh worked the navigation controls nearby, his fingers dancing over the buttons as he plotted their course through the asteroid field. Amy Brooks handled communications from her corner of the bridge, her blonde hair pulled back as she listened to the radio chatter from other mining ships in the area. They had been working this field for days now, following the computer scans. That showed where the best metals could be found. The work was simple enough. Find a good rock, blast it apart, and collect the pieces that had what they needed. Most of the asteroids here were just regular space junk, but some held rare metals that Earth colonies needed for building new cities and ships. Was about to order another scan when Amy looked up from her station with a confused look on her face. She pressed a few buttons and listened to her headphones again before turning to face him. "Captain, I am getting some strange readings from Sector 7, she said, pointing to a cluster of asteroids on the main screen. The quantum scanners are picking up energy patterns that do not match anything in our database." Jake walked over to look at the readings himself. The numbers on the screen did not make sense. Whatever was out there was putting out more power than their entire ship. He had seen energy readings like this before, but only from the big fusion plants that powered Earth's major cities. "Lisa, what do you think about this?" Jake asked, calling his engineer over to look at the data. Lisa studied the readings for a few minutes, her face growing more puzzled with each passing second. "This is not natural, Captain," she finally said. "No asteroid should be generating this much power. Either our scanners are broken, or there is something out there that we need to take a look at." Tony had already plotted a course to the source of the readings. "It would take us about 2 hours to reach that location, Captain," he reported. "The asteroid causing the readings is about twice the size of our ship. Nothing we cannot handle." Jake thought about it for a moment. They were supposed to be mining for metals, not chasing strange energy readings. But his curiosity was stronger than his caution, and besides, if there was something valuable out there, it could make them all rich. "Set course for those readings," Jake ordered. "Let us go see what is making all that noise." The New Horizon moved slowly through the asteroid field, dodging the larger rocks and pushing aside the smaller ones. Jake had flown this route 100 times before, but today something felt different. The usual radio chatter from other mining ships seemed quieter, and even his crew was more tense than usual. As they got closer to the target asteroid, the energy readings grew stronger. Amy was monitoring their communications equipment to make sure the power surges would not damage their systems. Lisa kept a close eye on their engines in case they needed to leave quickly. "There it is," Tony said, pointing to a large, dark rock floating ahead of them. "But Captain, I am not seeing anything unusual about it. It looks like every other asteroid we have seen." Jake stared at the rock through the main viewer. Tony was right. The asteroid looked completely normal, just another chunk of space debris floating in the dark. But their scanners insisted that it was generating enormous amounts of power. "Use in closer," Jake ordered, "but keep our distance. If something goes wrong, I want to be able to get out of here fast." As the New Horizon moved closer to the asteroid, Amy suddenly sat up straight in her chair. "Captain, I am detecting some kind of structure inside that rock," she said, her voice tight with excitement. "It looks like the entire asteroid is hollow, and there is something big inside it." Lisa was already running detailed scans on the object. "The outer shell is just regular rock and ice," she reported. "But underneath, there are metal structures and power systems that I have never seen before. This is not human technology, Captain." Jake felt his heart start to beat faster. In all his years of space travel, he had never encountered alien technology. Humans had been exploring space for over a century, and they had never found any sign that other intelligent life existed. If what Lisa was saying was true, then they had just made the most important discovery in human history. "Can we get inside?" Jake asked. Tony was already scanning the surface of the fake asteroid. "There appears to be some kind of docking bay on the far side," he said. "It is designed for ships much larger than ours, but we should be able to fit inside." Jake made his decision quickly. "Take us in," he ordered. "But everyone stay ready. We have no idea what we might find in there." The New Horizon moved around to the far side of the asteroid, and Tony guided them toward what looked like a large opening in the rock. As they got closer, the opening began to glow with a soft blue light, and Jake realized that the alien technology was responding to their presence. "The docking bay is activating," Lisa reported, watching her instruments with amazement. "Whatever built this place, they are still here." The docking bay closed behind them with a soft hiss as the New Horizon settled onto the alien landing platform. Jake looked around at the walls of the chamber, which were covered in strange symbols that glowed with the same blue light they had. Seen from outside, the air in the docking bay was breathable according to their sensors. But Jake ordered his crew to keep their environment suits on just in case. "Amy, are you picking up any life signs?" Jake asked as they prepared to explore the alien facility. Amy checked her scanners and shook her head. "Nothing, Captain," she reported. "Whatever built this place, they are not here now. But the power systems are still active, and I am detecting what looks like computer networks throughout the structure." Lisa was already studying the alien technology. Around them, the walls were made of some kind of metal that was lighter and stronger than anything humans had ever developed. The power conduits that ran along the ceiling used principles that she did not understand, but she could see that they were incredibly efficient. "This technology is centuries ahead of ours," Lisa told Jake as they walked deeper into the facility. "Maybe thousands of years ahead. Whoever built this place could probably travel across the galaxy in days instead of months." They found themselves in what appeared to be a control room filled with alien computer terminals. The screens were dark, but when Amy approached one of them, it suddenly came to life. Symbols and text scrolled across the display in a language that none of them recognized. "I think the computer is trying to communicate with us," Amy said, studying the patterns on the screen. "Some of these symbols keep repeating. If I had enough time, I might be able to figure out what they mean." Jake gave her permission to try, and Amy began working on the alien computer system. She was good with languages, and she had always been able to figure out new communication protocols quickly. After an hour of careful work, she managed to access what appeared to be a database of information. What they found made Jake's blood run cold. The database contained detailed files about Earth and the human colonies. There were maps of human space, information about human technology, and even personal data about important political and military leaders. The aliens had been watching humanity for decades, studying them like scientists studying laboratory animals. "Captain, you need to see this," Amy said, her voice shaking. "According to these files, we are scheduled for something called subjugation. The aliens consider us a primitive species that will eventually need to be conquered and controlled." "Lisa, found technical specifications that showed human weapons and defenses in detail. The aliens knew exactly how strong human military forces were, and they clearly did not consider them to be much of a threat. The files also contained invasion plans for Earth and the major colony worlds. "How long do we have?" Jake asked, dreading. The answer.Amy continued translating the alien text. "It looks like they were planning to wait until humans expanded beyond the current solar systems," she said. "But Captain, some of these files are recent. They have been updating their intelligence on us regularly." Tony was monitoring their ship's sensors when he suddenly called out a warning. "Captain, we have company," he said. "Something big just appeared outside, and it is not human." Jake ran to the nearest viewport and looked out into space. What he saw made his heart stop. A massive alien warship had appeared next to the asteroid, easily 10 times the size of the New Horizon. The ship was sleek and dark, with weapons that looked powerful enough to destroy planets. A voice suddenly filled the control room, speaking in perfect English, but with a tone that was cold and completely without emotion. "Primitive humans, you have accessed information that was not meant for your species. You will surrender yourselves immediately for interrogation and disposal." Jake grabbed the nearest communication device and tried to respond. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel New Horizon," he said. "We came here by accident. We did not mean to intrude on your territory." The alien voice responded with what sounded like amusement. "Your intentions are irrelevant, primitive creature. I am Admiral Vex Corthane of the Dominion Empire. Your species has contaminated itself with knowledge of our operations. This contamination must be eliminated." Lisa was frantically studying the alien computer systems, looking for anything that might help them escape. The power systems in the outpost were incredibly advanced, but she noticed that the aliens had not bothered to install basic safety protocols. They were so confident in their superior technology that they had never considered the possibility that someone might try to sabotage their equipment. "Captain, I might have an idea," Lisa whispered. "If I overload the power core in this facility, it could create an energy surge big enough to disable both our ships temporarily. It would give us a chance to escape." Jake looked at the alien warship through the viewport. Its weapons were already charging up to destroy the New Horizon. They had no choice but to try Lisa's desperate plan. "Do it," Jake ordered. Lisa ran to the main power control panel and began overriding the safety systems. The alien computers tried to stop her, but her human intuition allowed her to find solutions that the logical alien programming could not anticipate. Admiral Corthane's voice came over the communication system again, sounding angry now instead of amused. "What are you doing, primitive? Your actions are illogical and will only result in your destruction." "Maybe," Jake replied, "but at least we will go down fighting." The power core began to overload, and alarms started sounding throughout the alien facility. Lisa grabbed her tools and ran back toward their ship as the walls around them began to glow with dangerous energy. "Tony, get us out of here the second Lisa gets on board." Jake shouted. The energy surge hit just as the New Horizon's engine started up. Both ships were caught in the electromagnetic pulse, and their systems shut down temporarily. But Tony had been ready for it, and he managed to restart their engines before the alien warship could recover. "Hyperspace now," Jake ordered. The New Horizon jumped into hyperspace just as the alien weapons came back online. They had escaped, but Jake knew that their troubles were just beginning. The aliens now knew that humans had discovered their plans, and Admiral Corthane did not seem like the type to forget an insult. As they raced through hyperspace toward Earth, Amy continued working on the alien data they had managed to download. What she found made their situation even worse. The Dominion Empire controlled thousands of worlds across the galaxy, and they had never been defeated in battle. "Captain, Amy said quietly. "I think we just started a war." The journey back to Earth took 3 long weeks, and every day felt like a race against time. Jake spent most of his time on the bridge, staring out at the swirling colors of hyperspace and wondering if they would arrive to find Earth already under attack. Amy worked around the clock to decode more of the alien files they had stolen, while Lisa studied the technical data to understand how Dominion technology worked. What they learned during that journey made Jake wish they had never found the alien outpost. The Dominion Empire was older than human civilization, and they had been conquering worlds for thousands of years. They divided all species into 2 categories: those who were useful as slaves and those who were too dangerous to be allowed to live. According to their files, humans fell into the 2nd category. The Dominion sees us as a threat because we developed technology too quickly, Amy explained as she worked on translating another data file. Most species they encounter take thousands of years to advance from basic spaceflight to interstellar travel. Humans did it in less than 2 centuries. Lisa had been studying the technical specifications of Dominion weapons and ships. Their technology is incredibly advanced, she reported, but it is also very rigid. Everything follows the same basic design principles, like they stopped innovating centuries ago. They rely on superior firepower rather than clever tactics. When the New Horizon finally dropped out of hyperspace near Earth, Jake immediately tried to contact Earth Defense Command. Getting through to the right people took hours of arguing with low-level bureaucrats who thought Jake was either crazy or lying. Finally, Admiral Patricia Collins agreed to meet with them at the main military base on Luna. Admiral Collins was a stern woman with gray hair and sharp eyes who had spent her entire career preparing for threats that most people thought would never come. She listened to Jake's report without interruption, occasionally asking Lisa or Amy to explain the technical details of what they had discovered. "Show me the proof," Admiral Collins said when Jake finished his story. Amy activated the holographic display and began showing the Admiral the alien files they had captured. The images of Earth and the human colonies appeared in perfect detail, along with tactical assessments of human military capabilities. The invasion plans were laid out step by step, showing exactly how the Dominion intended to conquer humanity. Admiral Collins studied the data for a long time before speaking again. "If this is real, then we are facing an enemy that could destroy us without breaking a sweat," she said. "How much time do we have?" "Unknown," Amy replied. The original timeline called for invasion after humans expanded beyond our current territory. But our escape from their outpost may have changed their plans. Director Kevin Stone of Colonial Intelligence arrived the next day to review the evidence. He was a cautious man who had built his career on being skeptical of extraordinary claims. But even he could not deny what the alien files showed. However, when they tried to brief the political leadership on Earth, they encountered resistance from unexpected sources. Senator Richard Hayes, who chaired the Colonial Affairs Committee, argued that humanity should try to negotiate with the Dominion rather than prepare for war. "We cannot assume that all aliens are hostile," he insisted during a heated meeting with the military leadership. "Perhaps we can find a peaceful solution to this crisis." Dr. Helen Carter, Earth's leading expert on alien biology, had been studying the biological data from the Dominion files. Her analysis painted a grim picture of what negotiation with the aliens might accomplish. The Dominion species appears to be naturally hierarchical, Dr. Carter explained to the emergency session of the Earth Council. Their entire society is built around the concept of superior and inferior beings. They literally cannot comprehend the idea of treating other species as equals. To them, we are either subjects to be controlled or threats to be eliminated. While the politicians argued, Lisa worked with Earth's best engineers to study the captured Dominion technology. What she discovered gave humanity its first real hope since the crisis began. The aliens are more advanced than us, but they are not necessarily smarter, Lisa explained to Admiral Collins. Their technology is based on principles we can understand and even improve upon. They have been using the same designs for so long that they have stopped looking for better solutions. Lisa's team began developing hybrid technologies that combined human innovation with Dominion principles. The results were impressive, but limited by Earth's industrial capacity. They could build better weapons and defenses, but not quickly enough to match the scale of the coming invasion. The debate about how to respond to the Dominion threat ended abruptly when Earth's long-range sensors detected a massive fleet approaching from deep space. The fleet was enormous, much larger than anything described in the captured intelligence files. Admiral Corthine had apparently convinced his superiors that humanity required immediate and overwhelming force. How long until they arrive? Admiral Collins asked the sensor technician. 7 weeks, Mom, came the reply. Maybe 8 if they stop to refuel. Jake stood in the command center and watched the display showing the approaching alien fleet. There were hundreds of ships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. In 7 weeks, they would reach Earth and begin the conquest of humanity. What are our chances? Jake asked Admiral Collins quietly. The Admiral looked at the tactical display for a long moment before answering. Honestly? Almost none, she said. But almost none is not the same as none at all. We have a few advantages they might not expect, such as, we are not like the other species they have conquered, Admiral Collins replied. Most civilizations they encounter have been spacefaring for thousands of years. They have established ways of thinking and fighting that the Dominion understands. We are young and unpredictable. Sometimes that can be more valuable than superior. Technology. Dr. Carter had been studying the psychological profiles of Dominion leadership that Amy had extracted from their files. They expect us to surrender once they demonstrate their superior firepower, she reported. Every species they have encountered has eventually accepted defeat when faced with overwhelming odds. They have never fought an enemy that preferred death to slavery. Lisa looked up from the engineering reports she had been studying. If we are going to fight them, we need to do it in a way they do not expect, she said. Their tactics are based on thousands of years of experience, but all of that experience is with enemies who think like they do. Admiral Collins activated the emergency communication system that would carry her message to every human world and colony. This is Admiral Patricia Collins of Earth Defense Command, she began. In approximately 7 weeks, our world will be attacked by a hostile alien empire. They believe we will surrender when faced with their superior numbers and technology. They are about to learn that they have seriously underestimated the human spirit. The weeks that followed Admiral Collins' announcement were the busiest in human history. Every shipyard in the solar system worked around the clock to build new warships and retrofit civilian vessels for combat. Mining ships, like Jake's New Horizon, were equipped with weapons and armor, while passenger liners were converted into troop transports and mobile hospitals. Jake found himself promoted to Commodore and placed in command of the civilian fleet that would support the main battle groups. Lisa worked with engineering teams across the system to install the hybrid human Dominion technology into as many ships as possible. The new weapons were more powerful than anything humans had built before, but they were also experimental and untested in real combat. Amy had been assigned to the communications center on Luna, where she worked with teams of linguists and computer experts to monitor Dominion fleet movements. The aliens made no attempt to hide their approach, broadcasting their intentions clearly across all frequencies. Primitive species of the third planet, came the message from Admiral Corthine. Your contamination of Dominion intelligence has accelerated your scheduled subjugation. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be swift. Resist, and we will make your species extinct slowly and painfully. Dr. Carter had established a research center on Mars, where she studied every scrap of information about Dominion psychology and tactics. Her team had identified several patterns in how the aliens approached conquest, and they were working to develop strategies that might confuse or surprise the enemy. The Dominion has never encountered an enemy that fights with passion rather than logic, Dr. Carter explained to the assembled military commanders. Every species they have conquered has eventually calculated that resistance was futile and surrendered. They do not understand opponents who fight even when they know they cannot win. As the alien fleet drew closer, Admiral Collins made the difficult decision to abandon the outer colonies and concentrate all human forces around Earth and Mars. The colonists on distant worlds were evacuated to the inner system, bringing with them every ship and weapon they could carry. Danny Murphy, a cargo pilot who had spent 10 years hauling supplies to the frontier colonies, volunteered to lead a squadron of converted freighters in hit-and-run attacks against the Dominion advance scouts. His ships were slow and lightly armed, but they knew the asteroid fields and shipping lanes better than any military unit. "We may not be able to stop them," Danny told his pilots before their first mission, "but we can make them work for every mile they advance." Sarah Williams, who had been the emergency coordinator for the Mars colonies, organized the civilian evacuation efforts with military precision. When the Dominion fleet finally arrived in the outer system, they found no easy targets, only empty space and booby traps left behind by the retreating humans. The first battle took place near Jupiter's orbit when Admiral Corfane sent a scouting force to probe human defenses. The aliens expected to face a few primitive warships that would flee at the first sign of superior firepower. Instead, they encountered a coordinated defense network that included military vessels, armed civilian ships, and automated weapons. Platforms hidden throughout the asteroid belt. Jake commanded the civilian fleet from the bridge of his upgraded New Horizon, coordinating with Admiral Collins' main battle group as they engaged the Dominion scouts. The alien ships were indeed more powerful than human vessels, but the humans fought with a creativity and determination that surprised their enemies. "Their formations are too rigid," Lisa reported from her position at the tactical station. "They follow standard attack patterns that we can predict and counter." The human strategy relied on speed and unpredictability rather than brute force. Squadrons of small, fast ships would dart in to attack the larger alien vessels and retreat before the Dominion could respond with their heavy weapons. It was dangerous work, and many human pilots did not survive their first engagement, but the tactics were effective. Admiral Corfane grew increasingly frustrated as the battle continued. His ships had superior technology and firepower, but the humans refused to fight the way they were supposed to. Instead of forming up in neat battle lines and trading volleys like civilized opponents, they swarmed around his fleet like angry insects, striking from unexpected directions and disappearing before he could retaliate. "These primitives fight without honor or discipline," Admiral Corfane complained to his staff officers. "They attack our supply lines and retreat when faced with superior force. This is not how warfare should be conducted." The alien commander decided to bypass the outer defenses and strike directly at Earth, believing that threatening the human homeworld would force them to surrender. He detached a large portion of his fleet and sent them racing toward the inner system, while his main force continued to deal with the harassment. Attacks in the asteroid belt. Sarah Williams was coordinating planetary defense preparations when the sensors detected the incoming alien strike force. Instead of panicking, she activated emergency protocols that had been developed specifically for this situation. Within hours, millions of civilians were moving into underground shelters and hidden facilities that had been prepared during the weeks of waiting. But not all of the civilians chose to hide. Thousands of volunteers, led by former military personnel, and experienced spacers, organized resistance cells that would continue fighting even if the planet was occupied. They had studied the Dominion files and knew that the aliens expected conquered populations to submit peacefully to their new masters. They think we will give up once they control our cities, Sarah explained to a group of resistance leaders. They have never had to deal with a population that refuses to be conquered. The battle for Earth began when the Dominion strike force entered the inner system and found human defenses waiting for them at every strategic location. Orbital platforms armed with the new hybrid weapons opened fire from positions the aliens had not expected. Space stations that should have been defenseless revealed hidden weapon systems and joined the battle. Admiral Collins had positioned her main fleet near Mars, ready to strike at the alien force once they committed to attacking Earth. The human strategy was risky, allowing the enemy to get close to their homeworld, but it was the only way to maximize their limited numbers and resources. Jake's civilian fleet played a crucial role in the defense, providing support and supplies to the military units while also conducting independent operations against alien supply ships. The converted cargo vessels and mining ships proved to be surprisingly effective platforms for the hybrid weapon systems Lisa's team had developed. As the battle raged around Earth, both sides began to realize that this would not be the quick conquest the Dominion had expected. Human forces were taking heavy casualties, but they were also inflicting more damage on the alien fleet than Admiral Corthon had thought possible. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion faced an enemy that seemed willing to fight to the last ship rather than accept defeat. The war that was supposed to last days had stretched into months, and Admiral Corthane found himself facing a situation that no Dominion commander had encountered in over 1,000 years. The human resistance was not weakening as their losses mounted. Instead, they seemed to be getting more determined with each battle, fighting harder and more cleverly as time went on. Lisa's engineering teams had achieved breakthrough after breakthrough by combining human creativity with captured Dominion technology. The hybrid weapons systems they developed were not only more powerful than original human designs, but they also exploited weaknesses in Dominion armor and shields that the aliens had never bothered to protect against. The aliens have been using the same technology for so long that they have forgotten how to adapt, Lisa explained to Jake during a brief break between battles. Their ships are designed to fight enemies who use similar weapons and tactics. They have no defense against attacks they never expected to face. Amy had been working with communications specialists from across human space to establish contact with other species throughout the galaxy. The Dominion files had contained information about dozens of conquered worlds, and Amy began broadcasting messages to resistance movements that the humans hoped still existed. The response was immediate and encouraging. Species that had been forced into slavery by the Dominion began coordinating their own rebellions, inspired by news that someone was finally standing up to the empire that had oppressed them for centuries. Uprisings began on worlds throughout Dominion territory, forcing Admiral Corthane to divide his attention between the human front and internal security. This is unprecedented, Admiral Corthane reported to the Dominion High Council during an emergency communication session. The humans have somehow inspired rebellion across multiple sectors. Our forces are being stretched thin, dealing with simultaneous uprisings. Dr. Carter's psychological analysis of the Dominion leadership had revealed a critical weakness in their imperial mindset. They were so accustomed to easy victories against demoralized enemies that they had no experience dealing with prolonged resistance from a motivated opponent. The Dominion military doctrine assumes that superior technology will always triumph, Dr. Carter explained to Admiral Collins. But they have never faced an enemy that refuses to accept the logic of their own defeat. Their commanders are becoming confused and making mistakes because we are not behaving the way their training taught them to expect. The turning point came when Jake led a daring raid against a Dominion supply convoy that was carrying reinforcements to Admiral Corthane's fleet. Using modified mining ships and cargo vessels, Jake's force managed to capture an intact Dominion command ship, along with its complete database of military intelligence. The captured data revealed not only the full extent of Dominion military capabilities, but also the locations of resistance movements on dozens of worlds throughout their empire. More importantly, it contained detailed information about Dominion psychology and command structure that Dr. Carter's team used to develop new strategies for psychological warfare. The Dominion hierarchy is based on absolute obedience to superior authority, Dr. Carter reported after analyzing the captured intelligence. Individual initiative is discouraged, and their commanders are trained to follow established protocols rather than adapt to changing situations. This makes them predictable, but it also means they cannot cope when their standard tactics fail. Danny Murphy had been promoted to colonel and placed in command of all irregular forces operating behind enemy lines. His pilots had become experts at hit-and-run tactics, striking Dominion supply lines and communication networks while avoiding direct confrontation with superior forces. The aliens keep trying to predict our movements based on military logic, Danny explained to his squadron leaders. But we are not a regular military unit. We are civilians who learn to fight, and we do not follow their rules. Sarah Williams had organized the civilian population of Earth into a resistance network that made traditional occupation impossible. When Dominion forces managed to land on the planet's surface, they found themselves fighting an entire population rather than just an army. Every city, every town, every neighborhood had become a fortress defended by people who would rather die than surrender their freedom. Admiral Corthane tried to break human morale by threatening to destroy Earth cities, but the threat had the opposite effect. Instead of surrendering, human forces launched increasingly desperate attacks against his fleet, willing to sacrifice themselves to prevent the destruction of their homeworld. These creatures are insane, Admiral Corthane complained to his staff. Officers, they attack my ships with weapons that cannot possibly penetrate our shields, and they continue fighting even when their cause is obviously hopeless. The climactic battle began when Admiral Collins launched a coordinated assault on Admiral Corthane's flagship, using intelligence from the captured command ship to identify weaknesses in Dominion defensive formations. Jake's civilian fleet provided support while Sarah Williams coordinated simultaneous uprisings on occupied worlds throughout the system. Lisa had spent weeks studying the technical specifications of the Dominion flagship, and she had identified a critical vulnerability in its shield generators. If human forces could coordinate their attacks precisely, they could overload the ship's defensive systems and disable it without destroying the valuable intelligence it contained. The assault required perfect timing and coordination between military units, civilian vessels, and resistance fighters on multiple worlds. Amy coordinated communications between all the different groups, while Dr. Carter provided psychological analysis to predict how the Dominion commanders would respond to each phase of the attack. As the battle reached its climax, Admiral Corthane found himself facing a situation that his training had never prepared him for. Human forces were attacking from every direction simultaneously, using tactics that made no sense according to established military doctrine. His ships were being overwhelmed not by superior firepower, but by an enemy that fought with a passion and creativity he could not understand. The decisive moment came when Jake's converted mining ship managed to ram the flagship's shield generator, creating an opening that allowed Admiral Collins' assault teams to board the massive vessel. Instead of fighting to the death as Dominion doctrine required, many of the alien crew began surrendering when they realized their cause was lost. Admiral Corthane himself was captured alive, along with complete records of Dominion military operations. throughout the galaxy. For the first time in their imperial history, a Dominion fleet had been completely defeated by an inferior enemy. The news of the victory spread rapidly throughout the galaxy, inspiring rebellions on hundreds of worlds. Species that had been enslaved for centuries began throwing off their chains, using tactics and strategies learned from the human example. The mighty Dominion Empire, which had seemed invincible for millennia, began to crumble as its subject. Peoples discovered that even the most powerful tyrants could be defeated by those who refused to surrender there. Freedom. Jake stood on the bridge of the New Horizon and looked out at the stars, knowing that humanity's greatest adventures were just beginning. The accidental discovery of an alien outpost had led to the liberation of countless worlds and the beginning of a new age of freedom in the galaxy. Earth would no longer stand alone among the stars, but would take its place as a leader in the community of free worlds that was emerging from the ashes of the Dominion Empire.